Have you ever gambled, Karl?
Well, yes, people know that I have. You can put the clip in of me showing how I celebrated when I did. In the world of gambling, Kerry Packer is a veritable legend. An eccentric and flamboyant personality, Packer thought nothing of gambling away literally millions of dollars in a single evening. Something that earned Packer the not unimpressive moniker of the greatest gambler in history.
So what does this guy Packer do?
Well, these days he spends most of his time being dead, but when he was alive, he was an Australian businessman who could frequently be found in the fanciest and most high-class gambling establishments the world over, spending millions upon millions of dollars on everything from, single throws of dice to games of baccarat and cards and things of that ilk.
So you say he was a businessman?
Yeah, he was a titan in the business world, and he was personally worth about $6 billion, which made him one of the richest and most powerful men in Australia, if not the entire fucking world.
What business was he in?
Everything. Mostly media, though. I think he owned a couple of television companies and stuff like that, but you can put a full list of his holdings down below. If anyone gives a shit, but suffice to say, he had an almost inexhaustible supply of money, and there was nothing he could not buy on earth that would, deplete his seemingly limitless funds.
So you mentioned earlier that he was a fan of gambling.
Yes, and when you have virtually unlimited funds, there is nothing that you can't gamble away and have to worry about it. So it's noted that he would gamble away millions of dollars in single gambling sessions because he always had more money to go.
Why the fuck not?
Yeah, exactly. If you're never going to run out of money, what's the fucking point? There's no reason not to.
There's no risk.
Yeah, well, there wasn't, was there? And that's the point. And I'd say that doesn't make you a very good gambler, but whatever, because what's gambling without risk? But Packer enjoyed the high of gambling, and he was such a prolific gambler and winner, which is the important part here, that he was banned from many gambling establishments the world over because he frequently ran many casinos out of business due to the obscenely large bets he would make.
So how did he go about betting huge sums of money at
because
time?
Casinos don't often extend the ability to gamble away millions of dollars in one go to just anybody. So Kerry Packer, as like most businessmen, hated having his time wasted. So he had an army of assistants that, when he felt like going on a gambling spree, would call ahead to every casino in the area and sometimes the world, because obviously he had a private plane, go wherever the fuck he wanted to find out what their limit was and whether or not they'd increase it for Packer. And if it wasn't to Packer's liking, he'd just go somewhere else. And while we don't have any hard numbers on how much he was allowed to gamble at any one time at certain specific establishments, there are stories of him betting upwards of $500,000 on a single throw of dice or game of cards. And that's just a crazy amount of money. And as you can imagine, when you're gambling that amount of money on just one thing, the amount of money you can potentially win is obscene. And he frequently won so much money. As I said, casinos were ran out of fucking business by him, which is something he quite enjoyed. And there's a story about when he was in one establishment, he got kicked out. And he asked them why and said, "Sir, you've won too much money." And he exclaimed to the table, "Wow, I've always wanted to be kicked out of a casino for winning too much money." Just grabbed all his chips, cashed them out and left and went to another casino, because that's how Kerry Packer rolled.
So seeing as he would win large amounts of money.
Yeah, sometimes millions of dollars in a single evening.
I imagine he would be a generous tipper.
Oh, he was arguably the most generous tipper ever. And while he's mostly known for his gambling exploits, as I said, he was a billionaire, so he's not risking anything, which I don't think makes you a good gambler. But he was arguably the greatest tipper in history. And as an idea of how wildly generous he was to croupiers, waitresses, and just random people who helped him out during his gambling sessions, there was an old adage in Vegas that nobody was as ill as somebody who called in sick when Kerry Packer was in town. Because there were stories about him just the usual fare of flicking $1,000 chips at people during gambling sessions, people who's brought him a single drink.
Yeah.
And they're fairly standard. So let's move on to some of the more insane things he did when he was in a particularly good mood.
So have you got any examples of these insane tips that he would just give out?
Well, yeah, it's noted that Packer would reward especially attentive waiters or waitresses, or just people who just helped him out during an evening with enough money to buy a house. And as a businessman, he understandably disliked taxes a whole bunch, and he would go out of his way to ensure that everybody he tipped got to keep as much of the money that he gave them as possible. And there's a famous story about during one epic gambling session, there's a really nice waitress who'd been helping him out all night, and he said to her, I'd like to tip you $80,000. And the waitress said, that's very generous, Mr. Packer, but unfortunately, everyone has to pool tips. He said, well, that's unacceptable. Get me your fucking manager right now. And obviously the waitress, terrified, goes and fetches the manager over, and Packer just like stands up to full height and screams at the manager, you fire this waitress right now. If you do not fire her, I will leave this establishment and never give you any business again. Manager complies, fires the waitress. Packer hands her the $80,000 and says, now rehire her or I'm never coming back. Isn't that just like that's such a power move, isn't it? Like, as you might imagine, the manager immediately hired the waitress back and she got to keep the full tip.
That's amazing.
It's so good, isn't it? It's just like how terrified that waitress must have been until he hands the $80,000. Now hire her again.
Oh, fucking hell. It's like I used to get excited when I get like £5 tip. Like,
like $80,000.
$80 grand.
As I said, like nobody was more sick than someone who called in sick when Kerry Packer was in town. Because this is the kind of thing he did all the time.
So I'm assuming there are more examples because, of course, this is Fat Fiend.
Yeah, Fat Fiend's always more examples. There's another occasion, Packer was out golfing, so he didn't just limit his tipping exploits to when he was gambling. Although I presume he might have been gambling on the golf game itself, and he rewarded each of his caddies with a $75,000 tip. However, that alone is pretty generous, but he didn't want them to pay any taxes on it, so he made sure the tip was paid out via a casino, which would make it winnings and therefore not subject to tax. And it's noted that one of those caddies got to keep so much of the money they were able to buy an entire house with it. So he essentially tipped someone a house.
That's insane.
They got tipped a house for a single afternoon's work carting around a rich guy's golf clubs.
God, that's insane. I can't.
It reminds me of there's a lot of stories about like Bill Gates doing this that have never really been confirmed, and he himself denies them. Like you must have heard, Bill Gates paid off someone's mortgage.
Yeah.
Because they helped him out, when he was picking a car or something like that. It's like no. Like I don't think Bill Gates ever really done anything like that, but Kerry Packer absolutely did. Because one of his favourite things to do was pay off someone's mortgage.
Have you got any specific examples of this happening?
Yes, during yet another gambling session, Packer, as he often did, was talking to the croupier and asked them, just casually, do you have a mortgage? And they replied, yes, Mr. Packer, I do. And he says, well, how much is it? And they went, I think it's about $80,000 at the moment. And he went, well, that won't do, will it? And he just grabbed about $80,000 worth of chips and just slid them over and said, that's for you, and then picked up his winnings and walked off like his dick was attached to a nearby ceiling fan, just leaving the person there like, I guess I've just got $80,000 now.
It's just random people,
these are people that he met that evening while he was gambling, and obviously he built up a rapport with them and kind of liked them. I went, well, you've looked after me this evening, I'll look after you. Because to him, it was nothing, was it? $80,000 is a life-changing amount for a lot of people. For him, it's nothing. He would gamble that away on a single hand of cards. He did not give a shit because he just had that much money. And you might be thinking, well, surely though, he must have been a bit temperamental because all billionaires have that reputation of just being irate and angry all the time. And there's a story about one time. A waitress was carrying some drinks and Packer bumped into her and she spilt the drinks all over him. You might think, well, what happened to this waitress? Did she get fired? Did she get sent home? It's like, no. Packer stooped down to help her pick up the drinks and clean up, apologised profusely and asked her about her life and all that thing. Next day, she got a phone call from her manager saying, Mr. Packer's paid off your mortgage.
Wow.
It's like, what a fucking baller.
In my career, I've spilt many drinks and food on people, but I've never had my mortgage paid off because of it.
This is a lesson for all the waiters and waitresses out there. Just spill more stuff on rich people. You never know what might happen. Actually, no, don't do that. Because they're probably going to be arseholes.
That's bad advice.
But he was one of those people. It's a term I've heard that I adore, and it is money talks, wealth whispers. And that basically means that when truly wealthy people who just do not need to worry about money, do not need to brag about it.
Yeah.
And they're usually more humble, with obvious exceptions. Hello, Mr. 45th President of the United States out there. That just tends to be really down to earth about it because they don't care. And Packer was like that because obviously he was gambling. He didn't give a shit. So that's his evening off. That's what he enjoyed doing. So when he said the story of bumping into a waitress, he didn't burst into a blind rage because I've got nowhere else to be. I've booked this evening off. Whatever. I'm going to give you a hand.
Yeah.
Also, here's just money for your mortgage. It means nothing. It's like fuck it.
Also, it was partly his fault. It happened.
Yes. I'm guessing there's a lot of people out there who would imagine that scenario going a lot differently with, perhaps another billionaire. Hello again, Mr. 45th President of the United States. How's it going, mate? News is not going well for you, is it? Like, we're recording this right now in the middle of like some very, very rough water for you. Enjoy prison.
So out of all these examples of Kerry Packer being a hero...
Yeah, a legendary large donged like hero to the masses.
Do you have any personal favourites?
My favourite Kerry Packer story occurred when he had a heart attack. And he was rushed to hospital and survived. And the two paramedics who helped him that day found out because they had no idea who he was. They just turned up and helped him go to the hospital. The next day, they mysteriously had $1 million each deposited in their bank accounts by Mr. Kerry Packer as a thank you, as a tip for getting him to the hospital on time.
Oh, my God.
So he even tipped his fucking paramedics. What an absolute ledge. And
so how would he get all the information? Would he have to call up?
He's a billionaire. He could do, do you really think a multi-billionaire needs help getting hold of someone's information?
I guess not.
His assistants will take care of all that for him, and he ensured that the next day those guys had $1 million in their bank account.
It's insane.
Yeah. Meanwhile, other billionaires not doing so great, are you? Since it's basically been the entire thrust of today's article, Nisha, do you have any stories about tipping, either being on the receiving end or handing them out yourself, that you'd like to share with the audience at home?
Well, because I do a lot of freelance work.
Yes.
I did some work for a guy who contacted me online to do some video work for him.
That must be a rough click, that. That's a danger click right there, and as a woman on the internet, would you like to do some video work for me? Random message in the inbox. Anyway, continue.
But no, it was like, GoPro holiday sort of footage, so it was fine.
No dick pics, got it.
Yeah. So the website that I use, they take a percentage of what I earn basically. Mm-hmm. So I charged him not a huge amount, just a basic wage, and then I lost some of that to the website. Yeah,
like the finder's fee type thing.
And obviously he obviously knew that because he was using the website too, and he offered to pay me extra through my bank because I apparently did such a good job that he wanted to pay me more.
Yeah.
And then he's now come back for more work as well. So
there we go. Is he trying to poach my staff? Is he? Who is he? Who is he?
His name is Karl, actually.
Wait, what?
His name's Karl.
What? He's stealing my name as well. What a prick! Is it spelled with a C?
It's spelled with a C.
What a knobhead! Fuck you, Karl with a C. My name's cool. That's something similar I do. I don't really like talking about this, but whenever I get artists, it's always such a faff to get the artist to quote me a price that seems fair. By which I mean they always undersell their own worth, and it pisses me off. 'Cause I used to get that when I was a writer, and I said if I ever get the means to be hiring other people to do my work, I will not underpay them because I fucking hate that. And I hope you can confirm for the audience at home I do pay very well, and I'm a very I think I chase you for invoices.
Yeah, you're please send me your invoice.
Send me your invoice so I can pay you. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, send me your invoice so I can pay you. And I've had basically the exact same exchange with almost every artist who's ever contacted me or I've contacted about getting work for them, where I said, oh, how much would you charge for this? And they go, oh, about $30. No, that's not enough. That's not enough. Charge me what you think your time is worth. And go, $35? It's no, it's taking 10 hours. Charge me at minimum wage at the very least, and then add a bit extra on for the hassle I've got of contacting me for all this shit.
Yeah.
And it's just and I get so annoyed for the artist, thinking, oh man, how many people have they talked to where they've said this and they have to apologise for charging $30 for 6 hours work?
Yeah.
They feel like it's too much to ask.
I can understand that because I've been in a lot of circumstances with the freelance stuff. I always undercharge. So my immediate thought is they're going to say no when I figure out all the pricing. They're going to be like, no, that's too much. So Karl, I always go a little bit under. Yeah,
Karl, can you write 10 500-word blog posts for $5 a piece? Of course I can. I'll do that. I'll spend 3 days doing this for $25 fucking dollars or some shit. And I said, if I ever get to the point, I'm not going to do this because that just crippled me into mentally, because it's just so draining to do all that work, all that stuff, and then you get $5. And you think, what am I even doing with my life?
I just think some people don't realise the effort that goes into creative, if it's
not
writing.
Not many people do. I understand, from the terms of writing, but even just speaking to artists and seeing how much effort, and even if it takes them 10 minutes to do this thing, it's like the old, it's a famous story that goes about. It's not true, but it's a good example of what I'm talking about. And it's our company brings a guy in to repair a piece of machinery. and say, how much do you charge? He goes, oh, it's 10,000 quid. Bring him in. Goes up to him and goes, what's wrong with the machine? He goes, okay, you need to, that's the thing that needs fixing there. And the manager comes down and says, why are we paying you £10,000 for 5 seconds work? And he goes, well, you're paying me £10,000 because it took me 5 seconds. That's why you're paying me that much, because I'm trained up to know, and that's the same thing with an artist.
Yeah.
You're paying them that much money because they can do it in terms, that's how good, you're paying for their talent.
The service, the fast service, as well as the quality.
And I understand that, and I hope more people do. And yeah, if you want to send me artwork, I don't even know whether they're going to contact me now. Twitter's all private because of the whole fucking thing, but...
You got like a business email?
I do, but I don't check it. So,
good luck.
Good luck with that one, but artists, don't let yourself be like, undervalued. Remember the famous saying, fuck you, pay me.